Hey there, welcome to the Reinsurance Podcast, the place where we dive into all things reinsurance, the coolest part of insurance. We're your hosts, Jared and Ben, a couple of ex-practitioners who loved the industry so much we founded Supercede to tackle some of its biggest headaches. And we're here to share our insights and stories with expert guests as we uncover what's really going on in the industry.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Another special episode today where we're not alone. We have with us Gareth Evans and James Slater from Deloitte. Welcome guys, how are you?
Very well, how are you? Good. Ben, nice to see you.
Yeah, we're good, aren't we?
We're good.
Yeah, we're going to start this off as we normally do with, I think, as mentioned, whether you were born in or fell into the industry, but what brought you on a strange and interesting journey to be doing insurance-related activities at Deloitte? And please embellish further with what those activities might be.
Shall I go first, James?
Go for it.
Well, I fell into insurance. Like all good consultants, I was told to get a wide variety of experiences. And after doing 5 or 6 years in financial services and telco, I got this wonderful opportunity to go and do a transformation project in an insurer. That was probably 22 years ago, and that was it. You know,
never looked back.
Never looked back. So, in those 22 since then, I've done a mix of sort of industry roles and consulting projects, but typically all around the sort of transformation agenda, and hence why we're talking to you guys today.
Yeah, excited.
Very exciting. How about you, James?
Similar story. Yeah, started on the grad scheme at Deloitte nearly 15 years ago. Wasn't quite my first project, but I did a transformation project actually at AIG, if I'm allowed to mention names. I spent 2.5 years there helping centralise their finance function into accounting centres across Europe. Enjoyed it so much and never looked back, really. So been working my way around the industry ever since.
Yeah.
So die-hard insurance transformation enthusiasts with us on the show today.
That's it.
Enthusiasm hasn't waned yet.
No,
It's fair to say. It hasn't waned.
No.
Oh, brilliant. And I think there was a special reason that we wanted to get you guys on the show, not just for your brilliant wisdom and incredible personalities, but also because this is the Reinsurance Podcast, and fairly recently you published a really brilliant report, by the way, so please do check it out if you haven't read it already. That was to our listeners. I presume you've read it.
But we were obliged to.
But a really brilliant report focused on ceded reinsurance.
Yeah.
So we really wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. What led to you even doing this report? What did you find out? And so on. We'll start with there. How did the report even come into existence as an idea?
Shall I have a go with that one?
Go on.
Because you did all the work. So.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think, what we have seen for years is that a lot of organisations have done a lot of transformation activity, whether it's core operations, claims, underwriting, whether it's into finance, etc. And a lot of you very clever placement people and reinsurance purchasing people have made things more and more exotic in terms of the requirements coming in. But the team in the middle that has to deal with that level of complexity has probably not had the benefit of the transformation that the core ops, finance and other parts of the function have. And these are material numbers, right? These can be 20 to 30% of your gross written premium, and they can be a material item on your balance sheet. So with that, plus the volatility that we see in the markets, whether that's the emergence of casualty issues that are going on, the sort of cat and weather type stuff, we felt it was a underserved part of the market, and also we want to bring the market together to participate a bit in these discussions, because I do feel the ceded re teams and the administration around that sometimes are a bit left behind. So we just thought it was a good opportunity for us as a firm, but more importantly a good thing to sort of solve for the industry.
Yeah, we've certainly seen when we talk to clients as well, like the underwriting teams have been working on projects and transformation for donkey's years, and like the core policy admin, like you sell a policy on the website and where does that go? Like those projects have been moving and been being done since, as you guys said, the starts of your careers. Yeah. But this is a section of an insurance company of which is one of the most important things that the insurance company does. Yeah. But they've been like, spreadsheets have been fine forever. And they've not, but I think you're right. Making this a thing that is brought to people's minds is super, super important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not sure whether it's been in the too tough to handle bucket or just there've been other priorities to the things that we've alluded to. But it does somewhat feel like the forgotten child of the various transformation programs that insurance companies have embarked on over the last 15, 20 years, right?
Yeah.
And I think your point was spot on. I mean, it is still the go-to risk transfer and capital management tool of any major insurer. You know, the CEO still says, you know, what's net combined, you know. So it is a vital tool for the insurance industry to adopt to and adapt with. So, you know, we really did see it as a chance for us, similar to what you guys have obviously identified.
So what did you find out, James, when you did all this work for Gareth?
Well,
Not for me.
Well, maybe it's worth just stepping back and just describing what the survey was. So we had a number of participants across both insurers and reinsurers, so the retrocession side of reinsurers. In terms of those that participated, it totaled 100 gross written premium, 20 on the ceded side in terms of written premium. So we had quite a large sample size, which was great. 5 of the top 10 London market syndicates by size as well, and a number of the top sort of European and global organisations. So, and really what we were looking to do was ask them some questions around where are they at in terms of the evolution of their people, process, data, technology, and you know what the state is at the moment in terms of what they're operating with, but also then where they're at in terms of their modernisation journey, how much they're investing, where they're looking to get to, etc., etc. So that's sort of the backdrop, gives you a sense of, you know, what we were trying to do. Gosh, there's so much to cover. There's a whole chapter on each area, right? People, process, tech, data. I mean, I think if I was just to summarise some of the, you know, the key points that came out for me, I think that one of the questions we asked was, do you anticipate? I mean, Gareth was talking about exotic reinsurance structures, right? There's been a lot of innovation in the market over the years. One of the questions we asked was, do you anticipate the complexity in reinsurance structures and the types of products that you're purchasing to continue to increase? And the overwhelming response, I think it was about 80% of all our participants responded with, yes, absolutely, it will continue. So I think therein lies the challenge for those that are on the receiving end of those contracts in terms of administrating them and accounting for them and et cetera, the complexity is going to continue. And that is one among many drivers of why I think organisations have said, hang about, we now need to start investing in this, and we're seeing lots. So, yeah, that's one of the key findings.
It's not a mission for the faint-hearted.
That's it.
What you've said, I remember we've spoken previously about this, but addressing this problem is sort of complicated, even just trying to figure out who should be involved in solving it, right? Because as you said, Gareth, earlier on, in the middle to some extent, right? They're not quite the front office. They're receiving lots of things from the front office. Not necessarily the best things at times, and they're having to interact with what comes out the other side in the back office, but there's no, you know, clear path or even clear reporting in a given firm. So,
well, one example on that is not necessarily from the survey, but one of the projects that we have been involved in was with an insurance company. We did a bit of a study on who is involved, how many people, how much effort, and we identified there was probably about 30 FTE or 30 people's worth of effort, but it was across over 150 people, right?
Wow.
So coordinating, that's, you know, people in underwriting, people in claims, downstream in finance, et cetera, touch points into risk. So one of the challenges is, you know, how do you coordinate all of that? And, you know, maybe we'll get to sort of what insurers can do about some of our findings, but one of the things organisations have started to think about is how do you centralise some of that capability, so you can coordinate it more effectively and create a bit of a powerhouse around this particular topic.
What it sounds like what you're saying is, if you're sat there looking at your Ceded Re team and there's, say, 5 people in your Ceded Re team, you're like, oh, it's all right. If it's not great, it's only 5 people being affected. Actually, probably it's, you know, a factor of 10 beyond that. And actually it's like, no, those people are going to be a drag on, you know, 10 times that 50 people plus's time. Or in this scenario with a bigger team, you know, potentially hundreds of people's time being wasted if your Ceded Re team's not up to scratch effectively with
100%.
Wow. And the data is relatively complex, as you said, and you know, it's quite often that the teams in the claims function or the underwriting function don't fully understand what or why they need to capture.
Yeah.
So that makes the process very inefficient and, dare I say it, prone to a few holes now and again, which we've seen from auditors and regulators, etc. They don't like it so much.
What would you say are some of the biggest holes or pitfalls that you could run into if you get this wrong? Just as we lay the scene for why you should really get it right.
Restatement of financials.
If you take a step beneath that, I think that's right. There is a material risk of getting your financials wrong.
Yeah.
I think there's a material risk of leakage. Studies have proven that time and time again. I think there's a material risk of not being clear on your counterparty exposures and what they are, whether they're an internal counterparty or an external counterparty. There's an issue around your accuracy of your performance management information. It's pervasive through the whole organisation. Your net reserves. So it's really, it's a fundamental line on almost every piece of financial analysis you do.
Yeah. It's in a previous episode we were talking about sort of this exact problem of what's the worst that happens when the data is not very good. It's well, the worst that happens is restating finance. There's some serious downfalls. And I think the industry likes to think about this, at least currently. I think that's changing now, but as nice to have, kind of housekeeping type stuff. You're no. If this is wrong and you're beginning to leverage up and improve your tooling that gives you a better view of this, and you find fundamental misstatements, those are very, very serious things. And given the size of a reinsurance purchase to an insurer, these are material in their importance. And so this is why I think you're seeing that acceleration and that shift to improve how they put this work together, because it's too important. They're seing that now.
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's a time to react point in it as well. I think through this sort of the big hurricane season we had a few years ago, organisations understanding their limits, exposures, capacity, where they were really at, it was quite painful, right? And boards were asking for answers in hours. They probably weren't given the answer for 10 or 15 days, right? Yeah. So that's also brought it to the fore, I think.
Yeah, it'll be how many clients do we have? That's how many spreadsheets we need to open.
Yeah.
So
I was just going to bring it back to the survey. One of the questions we asked was, what is the key driver behind you spending upwards of $10 million on transforming your ceded reinsurance function? And what came out top was risk of misstatement. Yeah. So that's what's keeping execs awake at night and worrying about big swings, as you're alluding to in results. Interestingly enough, the second, which was also a non-financial benefit, if you like, was, and I guess, Gareth, you were alluding to it, was acceleration of the close timetable. Yeah, so one of the things that we've seen where we've been involved in transformations around the finance agenda is ability to get your results to internal review, but also to market. And ceded reinsurance, which is clearly dependent on you having done your gross close and being clear on all your inwards data, is highly dependent on that, but is a huge blocker in the process because it's not automated, it's dependent on manual spreadsheets, etc., etc. So it's interesting that both were on the non-financial end of the spectrum, but quickly followed by that was the point around leakage, and I think more and more organisations are realising there is a proper return on investment to be had here. I think you were talking about small teams earlier, right? I think a lot of organisations have compared the size of the underwriting function to the 10 to 15 people that are operating spreadsheets in the ceded reinsurance function and gone, maybe not. We'll go over here. But I think you have to be careful with this one. But but on the leakage in terms of settling quickly, etc., I think organisations are beginning to articulate business cases around that in terms of protecting their cash position.
Well, I also think what you'll begin to see happen, it's starting now, but when you see a number of sort of leaders in the market begin to do these projects themselves and roll the outputs and the success of that out, the rest of the market begins to take notice, right? In the same, it's maybe more self-evident in some ways for the underwriting functions to do that, but when a bunch of different firms started saying, here's how we're transforming how we underwrite risk, the rest of the market went, we need to do that too. We need to go procure budget. This is something that we need to not fall behind on. I think we're in the early innings there, but what you're going to see is something very, very similar where I was like, well, all these other big insurers are starting to put down the money and fix these things so that they can buy reinsurance more effectively, or they can get better pricing or close more efficiently. Like, and that's all good, but you'll get their peers and their sort of levels around that going, okay, we need to also get, like, that becomes an easier conversation at the C-suite to push those agendas forward.
I mean, I think the conversation in the market has changed considerably in the last 10 years. If I go back to some of the transformation programs that I was involved in the early 2010s, no one was really doing it. It wasn't even really on the agenda in some of the organizations I was talking to. Where it was, the business case was constantly being refined and pushed down the road. Now I'm with an organization in the early 2020s that are just starting their journey, and they feel like they're behind the curve on everyone else, which just shows you how much has happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot of technology come through as well. I think, your organisation being the forefront of that. But we've seen some consolidation around not perhaps your direct peers, but the complementary providers, if you like. We've seen a lot of investment in their tooling. A lot of buyout and a lot of big brands coming into that space, and still some private equity in there. So they clearly see a market for it, and there's an emergence of 2 or 3 players now that seem to be very capable, full spectrum type solutions, which weren't there 5 years ago.
And do you think it's all underpinned by this kind of recognition that the data that goes through or comes from that team is actually quite important? It seems to link together all these things, the leakage, the risk of misstatement, and so on and so forth. What is the state of data in Ceded Re in 2024, do you think, at the moment? Well, grimaces all around for those not
I'm
watching.
trying to think of a good analogy, but you might be a bit more quicker of thought than me.
I mean, I think to bring it back to the survey, definitely it was one of the things that was highlighted above many. Issues with data drive lateness in processes, and if you can't flush everything through your strategic end-to-end solution, then you're into manual workarounds and et cetera. So there's a centralization of sourcing. Where does it all come from? But there's also a sort of a timeliness of that data as well, and I think organizations are still facing into it. What is really interesting for me in terms of the modernization journey that a lot of insurers are on is that those that are prudent are investing in both how they source their data as well as the system that is used to calculate the downstream sessions, right? And on occasion, I have conversations with people about how much it would cost to stick a system in. But that is not the whole answer. And I think those that are biting the bullet and tackling upstream data, as well as the system, the ceded reinsurance system that it feeds, are those that will win out in the future and be ahead of their peers in terms of the way in which they orchestrate the end-to-end process around ceded reinsurance. So I think there are lots of cases of organisations on this journey and people that are investing big sums of money to try and get it right, but there's a long way to go.
Well, and when we think about that, and it is that sort of chain, isn't it, from like the underwriting of the original policy all the way through to reinsurance and retro and similar, but you have like the stages of which the data is captured and goes into a system, and it can be transferred to another system, and it passes through. But what you've always had historically in Ceded Re is all of a sudden this real big gap between the core systems of record and then where they enter what they bought for reinsurance. So as much as the data flows from like your online form filling into their core system, into the claim that you made, and like all those things are talking, when you go to Ceded Re, all of a sudden that all pauses and everyone prints out something or reloads it and rekeys it and manipulates it, and then they email stuff around, and then they retype it all into a space, and then back to electronic, right? And what we're seeing here is, what if you could have it where the data from there just goes into that thing, and then as you're doing a deal, the data from there goes into that thing, and you get this sort of all of it's connected up, and you're right, where if you build a massive sort of post-placement reinsurance system, but the way you get data into it is after renewal season, you take 112 PDF slips and you begin to manually type them in, or get some wizard that like extracts the fields from a like PDF. Like that cannot be the pinnacle of what we do there. And so the better we're able to move the submission data digital, to move the deals into digital space, and then send that, like now we're syncing these things up and we're radically improving like the speed, the accuracy, the efficiency of all of those stages in the game.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, your question about state of the nation on data. I was trying to think of some smart anecdote, but I wasn't quick enough. But I mean, I would sort of say that the key thing is that I think all the projects and clients that we see the vital inclusion of the data aspect to it, and the rare occasion that the ones that don't, I think, do live to regret that decision. You know, it makes your project a bit more complex, a bit bigger, but I think the outcomes in terms of quality of deliverables, in terms of being able to scale and grow, all of those things are negated if you don't face into it in an appropriate way.
Yeah, completely. And I guess if we take a bigger step back and look at the industry, you've obviously done this huge survey where tons of firms have said the data's not good enough, our Ceded Re systems have been neglected and we need to sort it out. Do you think now, having had that report shared back and settle a little, is the industry galvanized? Are they getting ready to act? Are they acting? Do they need more of a push? Where are we at there?
They always need a push. Our clients, you know, and you know the industry well, right? It has competing priorities across a whole spectrum of must-dos, whether that's customer, whether that's regulatory, or anything. You know, I galvanizing is a strong word, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's real momentum around the conversations we've had, and I think as well, you know, although it's a bit on the less glamorous side of insurance, we've just gone through the biggest accounting change in the industry in 2 decades, or probably longer actually. And I think coming out of that, the CFOs and the CUOs, and they're getting together and looking over the horizon a bit and saying, come on, there's some basic capabilities that we really need to correct, and this is definitely in that top 3.
Yeah, the way I see it is we're almost going through this phase of insurers getting their house in order. I guess what I hope and what we might see off the back of your initiative is there's a greater level of connectivity and integration between, because it's not just a challenge within the organisations to connect underwriting, finance, ceded reinsurance, etc. But you've got to connect the cedant with the broker, with the reinsurer, and I think there is a much bigger, what I would like to see the market galvanise around. And I know we've had sort of one attempt through blockchain, but there's something there for us to go after collectively in terms of how we integrate the market across the different players. But I think we will need to see through this phase of, you know, insurers and reinsurers getting their, and brokers getting their houses in order before we can start to push on that. Yeah,
I think you're exactly right. If we look at the sort of early shift into technology being sort of leveraged in our industry, everyone had like their siloed systems, and at the first version of that was the hellscape of everyone built their own thing, and it's like it's everyone sort of spinning up their own version of a thing, which is what you needed. And then at least you had systems like Guidewire and be introduced that like everyone bought their own version. It was in their own like on-prem hosting environment or whatever, but everyone had sort of slightly similar versions of some things, but like none of those systems talked to each other. But reinsurance, and that's fine if it's processing a policy from whatever source into your own system of record. But when you look at reinsurance, like the functional role it plays is connecting parties, is sharing parts of my book to dozens of reinsurance partners and several different brokers, and them being able to like that shareability is like central to how this industry operates. And until we we make the systems talk to each other and ping the data around, we're going to be sort of always stuck with someone somewhere is downloading the spreadsheet and rekeying data into something. So I think we're getting close. I agree with you. I think there's momentum being had in that sort of transformation.
So we're running a bit up on time here. So just as a final question, here we are, Ceded Re, top 3 issue in insurance transformation from the sound of things. What can Deloitte help with?
James, do you want
Over
to? Oh, right, that's my job. Well, I could give you a very straightforward answer that says probably most things, right? But yeah, as I say, we have an event coming up in September, don't we? I think, James, which will be another showcase to get the industry together. We want to do more of that. That's really important to us, actually. On the actual consulting and advisory side, we've helped clients with figuring out the business case, the case for change. How do they do their architecture? Who are the right people to work with? We are independent when it comes to that. And we're backed by a scale delivery function as well. So we've taken on some of the bigger programs globally. Yeah. But we're just keen to be part of the market, keen to be part of the sort of continued focus on reinsurance.
Well, and it's important because people, it's such a big new lift that getting support from someone who's done it loads before, they're like, it's a bit easier than trying to, plow it alone. They're like, we'll go to Deloitte. They're going to help us, guide us through what we need, why we need it, how to get it done, how to get it over the line. All of those are really important pieces. And because this function's never had that support, they're not proficient at procuring software and these kinds of things. Absolutely. So you guys coming in and having a supportive role there is immensely valuable.
Yeah, and I think we've learned some good lessons already.
Not
all of them have been necessarily that easy, but I think we're out there sort of at the forefront of our peers in this. So we think we've got a good story to tell.
No, super exciting. Well,
certainly that survey is brilliant. So do read that if you haven't had a chance to. We'll put a link in the show notes. But otherwise, thank you so much, Gareth and James. You've been tremendous guests.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for hosting us.
We'll have to have you back when you find out more from your next round of conversations.
Yes, happy to. We might do a podcast from the stage,
invite us along.
Yeah, people attend.
Brilliant.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to the Reinsurance Podcast. If you enjoyed our show, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review to let us know how we're doing, preferably 5 stars. For more insights and updates, follow us on LinkedIn and visit our website at supercede.com/podcasts. You'll find the links in the show notes.